Everyone. My name is Michael Isley, and today I am going to be presenting on my project, which is adding a 15-acre hop farm and processing barn to Lions Loggers Brewery. Of this project, we are going to establish a 15-acre hop farm by August 2026, and this will supply Lions Lager with homegrown, high-quality hops. The project will be done within a $1.2 million budget, and it will reduce the reliance on external suppliers. Here are the project deliverables. First being completing the hop yard. This includes just tillage and everything else needed to make sure that the soil is ready for planting. Next, we plant the rhizomes, and this is making sure that planting is successful and that we don't need to replant any of the areas of the 15 acres. Next, we make sure that the barn for storage and processing is completed and is up to code with everything that needs to be met. After that, we will go through and install the harvest and drying equipment in the barn. And then after that, we're going to create some standard operating procedures for planting, harvesting, and making sure that the hops are up to quality. And then finally, our last deliverable is having a staff training manual and safety guidelines for our new farm and barn. So following the project deliverables, we have our project milestones. Starting at the top, we have making sure that our land is surveyed and prepared by December 1st. Going down, irrigation and our trellis systems will be installed by March 31st. Next, rhizomes will be planted about a month later. After that, making sure that the barn's completed a month later. Another month later, the drying equipment is installed. A month after that, staff hired and trained, and then finally, by August 31st, the first year of harvest will be completed. Real quick, I just want to highlight these two milestones. They'll come back into play a little bit later in the presentation, but those are going to be really important for our project. Excuse my ugly arrows, it's kind of hard to draw on a computer. Here we are at our work breakdown structure. This is just a snippet of my work breakdown structure for this whole project. And you can see the big red box surrounding some of the tasks. And those are under the milestones that I just pointed out in the last slide. So they're going to be pretty important later on. And you can just kind of see on the work breakdown structure that it shows each task for the project, its duration, start and stop dates, what resources are needed for those tasks, and then the total cost per Microsoft project for those tasks. So here is the cost baseline. Pretty simple slide, but the cost overview number highlighted in blue, that is from Microsoft Project with people's hours and certain materials and equipment needed. But this does not include everything for the project. So star down there, we have to go back and remember that my project has an original budget of $1.2 million. Now on to project team. This is highlighting everyone who will be very crucial in completing this project. So we have an externally hired agronomist. It's going to be responsible for soil and crop. Barry Burke on our finance side. Dougie Doug is probably the most important guy on this project, and we will see that in a couple slides here. Construction, that is externally hired. They're constructing and engineering everything. We are taking 2 workers from the warehouse now and training them to be farm operations management. Colby Moore managing our public relations, and Gary Grover is our farm relations consultant. Following our team members, we go right into our stakeholders. So Marshall Mathers is our project sponsor. We report to him on everything, so that's why he's highlighted in yellow there. Then we go down, we have a USDA compliance officer, making sure that their standards are met. Sonia Green is the brewmaster for Lions Lager, so she will be the end user of our new locally grown hops. Carroll Daniel Construction is the externally hired construction company, so they are a big part of our stakeholders. Our local community, they will be affected by our farm operations and using of the land. Local equipment dealers care because we're going to have to buy some equipment. And then our local workforce, will be brought on as seasonal workers. So now we're getting into our risk assessment. I went through the project and wanted to see where things could go wrong. And my top three risks for this project were a less successful hop planting. This would reduce our yield, and that had a risk factor of 75. Then we had a bug infestation that would ruin the crop once it's planted and growing. That had a risk factor of 40. And then finally, Dougie Doug gets tasked with other projects while working on ours, and that had a risk factor of 32. Over just to see how we're going to mitigate these risks. So for the first one, we're going to make sure that we follow our careful planting procedures. We're going to monitor germination, and if we need to replant, we will. For the bugs, we're going to apply targeted insecticides and make sure that we are monitoring local farms for pest activity so we could catch it before it got to ours. And then finally, for Dougie Doug, we're going to make sure that his project schedule is prioritized on our project, and if we need to adjust the resources, we will. Here's how a change is processed through our company and our team. And if we need to make a change, this is the process of getting it done. So first, the team or one team member will identify an issue and inform the project manager. Then the project manager will investigate the project and determine if a change is needed. If it is needed, the team will develop a plan. Then the project manager will submit the plan to Marshall Mathers and get approval. Project is approved, we'll implement the change promptly with the team. If not, the plan will be revised and changed and then resubmitted for approval from Marshall Mathers. Here we go. As with any project, we have a problem, and my problem was that Dougie Doug will be on a 12-week FMLA approved leave. And this is when our barn construction and equipment will be installed. And Dougie Doug is very important in these two tasks. And if you remember back to my milestones and my work breakdown structure, you could remember that those are very important within the project, as well as my team plan where Dougie Doug was highlighted. He is also very important on the project. So missing him for 12 weeks was something that needed to be changed. Have our problem and created our change control for it. So you can see the change name. We're having Kelly Watts fill in for Dougie Doug, and she's going to assume the roles of him while he is on the leave. We have our reason, which I just went over in the last slide. Our change was operational as well as compliance because he must be granted the FMLA leave. And then the deliverables down below that we kind of already went through. So here is a snippet of the project network. The project network is huge, so I couldn't get it all in one slide. But down in that red box are tasks that Dougie Doug would have been a part of, and now Kelly Watts will be assuming those roles. So doesn't change the network too much, just showing the project network and the tasks that he was a part of that Kelly Watts will now be taking his role on. Here we have how that change will impact our project, more leaning on the cost side. And we can see on the left chart, we have hours and cost that will be changed. That first task, we're going to get an extra 10 hours on, and then the rest going down, we can see the change in cost comes out to be an $8,496 reduction of cost. And then that right picture just shows how that cost impacts the overview from Microsoft Project. That first one was about 843, and now we're down to 834. So that $8,400 shows up. And I want to note that this change in cost does not go against this $834,000 in the scheme of the project. It goes against our original budget of $1.2 million. So that will be reduced by that $8,496 number. So implementing this change, we're going to have Kelly Watts take over all of Dougie Doug's responsibilities, as previously mentioned. And before Dougie Doug leaves, he's going to train Kelly Watts and document everything that he does so it's seamless and she does not have to continue to contact him while he's on his leave. Nobody likes that. Next, we'll have Kelly manage the barn construction tasks and we'll make sure that the project is progressing on time. And finally, she will oversee the equipment installation and will ensure that the equipment is properly set up to have the best efficiency. So this will all be possible by the training and the documentation before Dougie Doug goes on his leave. So here are some of the lessons learned that I had during this project. Losing a critical team member, like we lost Dougie Doug, could delay the project's progress. So we want to make sure that our employees are cross-trained and cross-trained well. We wanted to plan early. We had to coordinate the equipment being set up and installed in the building as the building was being completed. So if we would have had a better plan, we would have been able to avoid a couple bottlenecks. And then documentation of everything. We know that reading it and having procedures helps temporary or new people as well as us while we're completing this project. So if we had some procedures or things that could have went wrong from previous projects, we could have used that to help make our project run a little bit smoother. So as this is a recording, I can't answer your questions on the spot, but feel free to post them underneath and I will get back to you on those questions. And finally, thank you guys for listening to my project. I hope it impressed you and have a good one.